March 17th, 1977. That was the day the residents of Circleville, Ohio would never forget. Mary Gillespie, a school bus driver who was a mother of two and married to her husband, Ron Gillespie, opened her mailbox to discover a letter. The letter stated, "Stay away from Massey. Don't lie when questioned about meeting him. I know where you live. I've been observing your house and know you have children. This is no joke. Please take it serious. Everyone concerned has been notified, and everything will be over soon." The letter contained accusations of Mary having an affair with the West Falls School Superintendent, Gordon Massey. The author of this letter also stated threats of exposing the supposed affair. Mary, however, decided to ignore the letter, even though it contained a lot of personal information about her, like knowing where she lived and her having children. But when the second letter arrived at her home, threatening her again, she alerted authorities. After looking at the letters though, police had no leads. Just like Mary Gillespie, other residents in Circleville began receiving letters signed by a writer who remained anonymous. Ron Gillespie would eventually start receiving letters that exposed the supposed affair to him. He was determined that Gordon Massey was the real individual behind these letters and would confront him in person on the matter. However, Massey would decline all of it. Mary would eventually focus on one of her co-workers, David Lawnberry, who was another school bus driver. Lawnberry had previously asked Mary out on a date, and when she rejected, he began to act resentful towards her. She eventually decided to reach out to Ron's sister, Karen, and her husband, Paul Freshour, for help. The plan would be for Paul to write a letter to Lawnberry, accusing him of writing the letters. After the letter was sent out, they would suddenly stop appearing in Mary and Ron's mailbox for a few weeks. However, this would all change on August 19th, 1977. The phone inside Mary and Ron's house would begin to ring. When Ron answered, his neutral facial expression would turn to anger as he heard the caller on the other end. He would slam the phone back on the receiver, grab his gun, and tell his daughter that he was going to confront the individual who was writing these letters. However, this would be the last time Ron was seen alive, because that same night, Ron's truck would be discovered. The truck had collided into a tree, which would unfortunately kill Ron. Once authorities arrived, they came to the conclusion that he died from a drunk driving accident. However, this explanation didn't make any sense because, according to his family, he hadn't been drinking that day. It was also noted that before he died, he had fired his gun. Soon after Ron's passing, other residents once again began receiving letters, but this time it was an accusation that the sheriff, Dwight Radcliffe, was involved in some sort of cover-up in the case. Radcliffe responded to these allegations, stating that there had been an unknown individual who was involved in the crash, but they passed a polygraph test, and after Ron's autopsy, it was revealed that his BAC was .16, which at .15 and above means that an individual has almost doubled the legal amount in their system. Soon after this tragic event, it was discovered that Mary and Gordon had been having an affair, but Mary would claim the affair would begin after the letters started being sent out. In February 1983, Mary was doing her ordinary bus route when she suddenly stumbled upon a sign. The sign accused Gordon of raping Mary's 12-year-old daughter. Mary would rip the sign down, but once she did, she discovered a gun pointing at her. The sign had a gun attached to it, ready to shoot whoever took it down. Luckily, the gun didn't fire, and Mary alerted authorities. Once police arrived, they traced the gun back to Paul Freshour. When he was brought in for questioning, he said that the gun was stolen, but there were no reports of him reporting it missing. He would then be asked to give police handwriting samples so they could see if they matched the letters. They would use a document that Paul had written in his own handwriting for evidence, and after a handwriting expert went over the documents, they determined that Paul's handwriting was a match to the letters. However, despite the evidence police gathered up against him, Paul was determined to prove that he was framed, but this argument wouldn't change authorities' minds, and he was arrested and found guilty for attempted murder on November 2nd, 1987. He was given a 25-year sentence for this charge as well. However, while in prison, the letters continued to be sent out, and even to Paul himself. The letter that Paul received stated, "Freshour, now when are you going to believe you aren't getting out of there? I told you 2 years ago, when we set them up, they stay set up. Don't you listen at all? No one wants you out. No one. The joke is on you. Tell no one of this letter. I saw the paper. Great news. Great. The sheriff loved it. Do you believe it now? Do you?" Police still had no leads. However, that would all change in 1993 when a serial killer named Thomas Lee Dillon, who was recently arrested, sent a letter to Columbus Dispatch claiming that he was the writer of the Circleville Letters. Police would look into this claim and found that Thomas's handwriting was similar to the letters. However, despite the similar handwriting, police couldn't find any other evidence that Thomas was connected to the case. After being in prison for 7 years, Paul would be released on parole in 1994. The last letter was sent out on November 21st, 1994, and it was addressed to a journalist named Mary Mayhew, who was covering the case. The letter was threatening her to stop releasing information about it, and it also threatened her and her family. To this day, the case remains unsolved, and the only thing that remains from it are the multiple theories.